This conference will now be recorded.
That should do it there. Tonight is the first of 3 education seminars that we're going to be holding as a league. Tonight the topic is education and hockey. We also have seminars scheduled on November 15th and December 6th. We'll get the information out for those as we get a little closer. Before we get started, I'll ask that everyone turn off their mics and video for when Tom gets going here. And so you have an understanding of who Tom is and what he does. Tom is a retired high school principal from Port Alberni, BC. He has been an education advisor to a number of BCHL teams, and I think it's fair to say he's helped hundreds of young hockey players navigate the path to NCAA and college and university hockey. We're lucky to have him in his first season with us as the education advisor for the KIJHL. I'll turn it over to you, Tom, and we can get started.
Great, and pleasure to meet everybody, albeit by distance, but by now in a pandemic, I guess we've all become rather expert at this. I'm pleased to come to you as the education director of the KIJHL. When Jeff approached me with this idea, I really was interested, but had a lack of time, which is a big part of my life these days. Being a retired person, I want to have some time to do the things that I enjoy, but I really enjoy doing this. Working with some young people and families and assisting them wherever I can. As Jeff said, I've been working with the BCHL and their teams totally for about 18 years, very intensely for the last few years. In addition to that, some academies and some private consulting. So I've been very active in the field of education and hockey, but also with my background as an educator, working with all students, working with particularly high-risk kids. I also teach a course at Vancouver Island University. So multifaceted, many things I do. I don't know if we do any of them well, but I'm absolutely looking forward to presenting tonight and to being available as a advisor, as a consultant for the rest of your league. Essentially, Jeff, and I know my goal is that to build capacity within the KIJHL, to do more than talk about the importance of education in young people's lives, but to actually do something. So I really commend the KIJHL for standing up and addressing that. Basically, once we are up and running, maybe next couple of years, the education advisors on each of your teams will play a larger and larger role in getting information and having information available to you. In the meantime, I am available to those advisors to answer questions. I think you can imagine if I was trying to cope with the scope of how many families and athletes that we have here, I probably couldn't hope to do it justice, but by having your 20 education advisors or 20 contacts in each of the teams, it makes it certainly very, very possible. Tonight, if you have questions, and I hope you will, we'll keep them to the end so that, again, not to interrupt the proceedings until that time. If they're really specific questions that only relate to something involving yourself or your team, more than welcome to stay on the call later or to have a call from, if not the advisor at this stage, from the family. But preferably, that is the first line of communication and information is going to be with your advisors. We hope I will have one of the deliverables that I have agreed to is to prepare a resource manual for the league. And Jeff will be adding that and the other materials up to your website, so they will be available at all times. Resource manual, I think, will take the better part of this season to complete, and then it'll be our ongoing updates from there on in. So please ask questions when the time is appropriate, and I'll get started. I think I'll just get rid of my face here. Okay, so the title of our seminar tonight is Education Hockey, and as Jeff has already said, there will be 3 seminars. This one, which is kind of an introduction, but it does get into the nitty-gritties of what athletes and their families, what you need to know. The second one will get into some very specific things on college hockey, and the third one on aspects of self-marketing. There's my contacts. Again, I think it's been circulated amongst the league and it's on the website. Generally, anybody should be able to reach me. So tonight, we're going to be looking at the importance of having goals and dreaming, because I think without that, we're not going to go anywhere. But then putting those goals into a plan and then acting on your plan. We'll address the variety of options and opportunities that young athletes in hockey have. And I think a large portion of what I will be talking about tonight are your responsibilities, the things that you have to remember and that have to be addressed in the process. There are a number of misconceptions and pitfalls about this process, and maybe some people who think they know it, but do more of a disservice by just answering with a flippant question or answer, and it doesn't really give the answer and maybe leads to more assumptions and then problems. We'll also look at some of the realities. So again, it'll be a full 2.5 hours, 45 minutes hour. I think somebody's got their mic on, so I'll ask you again to turn off all your mics. Great. Who am I? Well, again, I can give you a rundown on all my involvement in hockey, which started as a young person growing up in Victoria, through the Minor Hockey Association there, Junior B, on to Major Junior, Pacific Coast Junior A League, British Columbia UBC, where I had a saw hockey scholarship in 1973, and all the way down through my important life in old timers hockey and various other things, to present day, where I work with young athletes. Educationally, you can see on the right there the various things that I've been involved in. Not to belabor that, I think the stories are more important about the athletes. These are the young people who I have worked with over the years. Again, I will ask that you turn off your mics. Somebody's got theirs on, and I think if it doesn't get addressed, it'll cause us a lot of interruptions throughout. So this was a reunion a few years ago of a number of athletes who I had worked with on the Alberni Valley Bulldogs, and not to belabor that it was the Bulldogs, that the main thing I'm talking about is that each of these young men had their own journey. Each of the young men in your league, each of the players that I'm addressing tonight and the ones that are out there will have their own journeys. I think the worst thing that people can do is to compare to, oh, I want to be like him, or, it's good to have idols. It's good to have people that you admire, etc., and you learn from their successes and their mistakes. However, it is not good to give up your own identity, and that's very important. Just to give you an example, within this group of young men, you can see on the right, each one of them went a different way. Some of them went on to Ivy League schools and all that goes with that, like Daniel Moriarty, went into Harvard and then played in the Central League and now works in finance, to Devin Timberlake, who played at Brown, grew up in Port Alberni. After Brown, played in the KIJHL, and now is a business consultant in Alberta. Each one had their paths, and it was unique. Some of them went to NCAA Division I, some of them went Division III, some of them pursued hockey after at the Canadian level in Canadian universities and colleges, some pursued in small colleges in Alberta, the ACAC, some pursued their hockey and education at colleges in BC. Some did not go on to play hockey at a competitive level. They went on, like the rest of us, to play in senior men's programs and in beer leagues, etc., and live very productive lives. Hopefully, each one of them, though, learned some things along the way. And it's those tidbits, those moments of clarity, learning from the process of being exposed to other people, etc., you can learn from. That is what hockey can do for you. It can bring you many, many things that will have a lot more far-reaching impacts than merely the hockey. I like to bring up third from the bottom, a young man, Tyler Boyce, who my wife and I billeted at our home, and Tyler came to us as a 20-year-old, and in his 20-year-old year, was in a trade, was somewhat embarrassed that he got billeted with the education advisor, because as he said, he was more of a hockey vagabond and not really, had not spent a lot of time addressing the education part, and he said, I'm going to take a course this year. And my response was, that's not what I'm all about. It's not what we're required to do. I just hope your time here is valuable time, and we can help you with that. And in the end result, Tyler spent some time working or doing some work experience with a local fire department, because fireman was one of the things that he was really interested in. We arranged a first aid course for him, because obviously that would be one of the requirements. We arranged for a truck driving certificate for him to take that course. And by the time he had finished that year, he had already started on his journey. His journey had previously obviously been carrying on, because life isn't a dress rehearsal. There is no stops and starts to it. It just carries on. His journey had been carrying on, but I think he learned at 20 years old to start being much more deliberate, to start looking at the big picture. And I'm very happy to say he's a very successful family man now, and is the youngest general manager in the history of Tech Mine, which is in Logan Lake outside Kamloops. If it interests you, makes a lot more money than most of us. So Tyler is a good example of somebody who the journey made a difference. I always love telling the story of Travis Cross. Travis was a grade 7 student in the junior high school that I was principal at Mount Pleasant, Port Albernian. He's a real scrappy little guy. He did play some hockey. He approached me in the hall between classes one day and tugged on my jacket, and I proceeded to look around and then look down. He was a small fellow. He's about 75 kilos soaking wet. And it was Travis, and he very excitedly relayed that he'd been watching the TV. It was the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona, Spain, was on the TV, and he had been watching it and had watched the Canadian in wrestling win a silver medal. Of course, I had been very much involved with the wrestling for quite a few years in Port Alberni, as well as at that school. And we proceeded to talk about Jeff Toohey, the fellow who won the silver medal, and how exciting it was for Canada. Then the bell rang, and Travis started to walk away towards his class, and he turned to me and he said, "Sir, one day I'm going to go to the Olympic Games." Now, that was a really critical moment for me, because you don't want to burst somebody's bubbles, somebody's dream, etc., but you need to bring some reality to the piece. And I informed him. I said, "Well, Travis, that's exciting. Perhaps you'd like to come out with a wrestling team." And the rest was history, because this is Travis 16 years later, definitely a different body type, stepping on the mat at the 2008 winter Olympic or summer Olympic Games in Beijing, China. Travis had a dream, and he had worked very hard for that dream. He became a successful wrestler in high school, went on to Burnaby Mountain, Simon Fraser, etc., and eventually made the national team and eventually qualified for the Olympic Games. It was quite a story. It actually did attract a lot of media attention across the country because he was a fellow from small town Port Alberni, and the whole community rallied to help him achieve his dream. But not many people, except ones who have heard me talk, know the continuing story. Travis is now a fireman in Port Alberni. He's a very successful family man who contributes to wrestling still. But at the Olympic Games, there were 65 of us from Port Alberni who were there to support him, which was very exciting. Our mayor, his family members, teammates, a lot of interesting people there. And after a very, very tough loss, he lost to a Turkish wrestler in a 1-1 tiebreaker. And 15 minutes or so after that loss, he texted me and asked me if I would meet him down at the athletes area. And I proceeded to get through security, showed my credentials, was able to wait for him in the media area, and he came out and we met, we hugged. I told him how proud I was of him, how what a journey he'd had, what just a very, very fine person that he had become. And Travis said, yep. He said, that I think is what really matters. But I have been, kicking the garbage can, disappointed, etc., over the loss. But he said, when I collected myself, I began remembering all the things that you had talked about over the last 16 years. And that was the Travis, it's the journey that counts. Remember it all, soak it all up. The people you meet, the people you love, the things you learn, the things you accomplish, all those things along the way, along the journey, not just the ultimate goal, are what is important. And he said, I know all those things, such as the people who I love and the people I have been in contact with, the experiences I've had, the places I've been, the accomplishments that I have been able to achieve are mine. And those I have with me. And that really has helped me through that immediate disappointment of one loss. So again, please remember that in your journeys. And I had a journey, I had a goal, I had a dream after I retired in 2012 to join a friend of mine who was leading a trek into Mount Everest. And while people thought I was nuts, I told them I might be nuts, but I wasn't stupid, and I was going to have all the precautions, etc., on this journey. And then I had the greatest pleasure of having my 20-year-old son join me for our trek to Mount Everest. And these are just a few of those shots. And I don't share them just because, again, they are part of the journey, part of my journey, that every step along the way, I learned, I became the person I wanted to become. We eventually got to the peak of KIJHL, which is a summit of 19,000 feet. And we left a small cairn. And here was my tribute to hockey with the Alberni Valley Bulldogs. Their poker coin, they can always say that it was at 19,000 feet overlooking Mount Everest. And there we are looking down at where the base camp is, the Khumbu Icefall, Mount Everest rising in the background. Myself, my good friend, internal medicine doctor, Robbie O'Dwyer, at that moment. And we stayed at the top for 15 minutes, half an hour, and watched the sunset. So if you have a goal, you have a dream, turn that into written concrete goals, and then create a plan for your goals, and then act on your plan. But the important thing is that often the journey the results are even better than you could have imagined. And again, that is my message to the young men here today as they continue on their journeys with their dreams of hockey and all that comes with that. Please always remember it's the journey that counts. But as you embark on your journeys, as you continue on your journeys, what are the things that are your responsibilities? What are the things you can do to help your chances to create more options, to create more vistas for you? What things are you responsible for? I've learned that I could divide it into three critical areas. Yes, you need to be the best hockey player that you can be. You have to train, you have to watch proper nutrition, you have to sleep well, you have to get fit, you have to learn technically all the skills that you're going to need, you need to practice those, et cetera, et cetera. You need to put in a lot of time into the endeavor that you have dreams about. And that is, in this case, hockey. But that is what you have to do if you want to be good and you want to have opportunities in any endeavor in life. You have to put some time into it. Things don't just happen. Now, obviously, if you want to carry on to college hockey, which I would advocate wholeheartedly for many of you, you need to pay attention to the educational part. What are the things that are important for you? What things are you going to have to do to qualify? What are the requirements, et cetera, et cetera? They can't get you into their school and they can't get you onto their hockey program unless you can qualify. Those are some big responsibilities, and they are often ones that are neglected till much later and often too late in the process to make a big difference. So again, as young men who are playing in this league, who may be 16, 17, 18 years old, there are some things that you need to address. And I hope that from this presentation and the subsequent ones, I'm going to help you find out and be clear on what those are. But having said that, the litmus test, the thing that is really going to make the difference, it is going to separate the men from, well, you could say it, men from the boys, but more appropriately, from the successful people to the unsuccessful, who are going to be have those options in their lives, or have the opportunities. It's going to be character, which is going to give the biggest boost to the options that they have. So just talking more about each of those three areas, I mentioned be the best you can be. Don't compare yourself to others. Work on those strengths and weaknesses. Develop your fitness. Become coachable. Listen, learn, lead a healthy lifestyle. Don't abuse substances. Get proper nutrition, lots of sleep. Make informed and positive decisions. And I think something that often too many people are forgetting in this day and age of specialization: play other sports. Cultivate your other interests. Don't become a one-dimensional person. I know for a fact that the hundreds of college and junior coaches that I speak to are not looking for people who just have a tunnel vision to be part of their program. They're looking for people who have wide variety of interests and abilities and personalities. Those are things that make life rich, and that's who they want involved in their teams. And also, generally, employers want the same thing. So in education, be the best you can be. It's your life, not somebody else's. And don't settle for the minimums. And I'll have lots to say about minimums. Don't get in the habit of being satisfied with less than what you can do. have an open mind. There's always something to learn, even when maybe the teacher isn't to your liking. There's other distractions, you can always come up with lots of reasons why we don't really grasp the learning that's available to us, but continue to have an open mind. Become a student of life. Education doesn't happen just in the classroom. Education happens everywhere. So when we talk about education, I think most people right away think of the four walls of a classroom and a school, etc. And I'm pleased, in everything that I am talking about, education is a global thing. It's what you were doing every day, the people you were meeting, the new opportunities you have, the situations that you go into, everything can enhance your education. Again, making good decisions. What do you need to do? What attentions do you have, details you have to pay attention to? Be the person who goes the extra mile, who's not satisfied with a C+. If that's not the best that person can do, always achieving, not necessarily higher than everybody else, but just what is best, what is the best you can do. Don't settle for the minimums. Don't settle for your second best. And live in the moment, but plan for the future. And yes, marks tell a story. So again, I'm not saying don't, I want my goal is to get a B in this class or whatever. But the story is one that the coaches want to read about the journey. They want to see what you've done. And you're just not someone who's chasing marks, etc. Yes, they're important, but they're not the end all. Everything counts though. But in character, it's the litmus test, as I say, the difference maker, the key factor in a successful life. It separates the genuine from the phonies or the also-rans. Positive character traits are the most sought after by coaches and employers. This whole presentation is not just about hockey. These are addressing what we always have to do, that positive character traits is something that every employer and every person out there is looking for. There are thousands of good hockey players, so why is it going to be you? They can always teach skills if maybe there's certain areas that you're lacking, but they can't teach character. They can't mold the person. The person has to do that themselves. If coaches make a mistake on players' character, they will pay dearly. So make no mistake about it. Any junior coach, any college coach who is looking to make a commitment to a player are going to explore every avenue. And one of those avenues is going to be, who is he as a person? It's often referred to, what's the X factor or the intangibles? An individual or a team can always rise above any obstacles if they have character. Without it, they're just another team or another person that had potential. It's easy to see talent and intelligence. However, you can't always see character. So how are you going to look for it? How are coaches going to look for it? Well, they're going to look at how you conduct your life every day. What you do when nobody's watching. I always love that definition. What do you do, or how do you behave when no one's watching? How do you treat other people? Everybody. How do you treat the kid in your class who's withdrawn and obviously has no friends, etc.? Just how do you view people like that? And how are you able to touch them and make maybe their life a little bit better? How do you contribute in the classroom, on your team, in your neighborhood, in your family? What are the things that you do? What character traits come through? And as a player, those character traits is what happens on the ice, what goes on in the bench, in the dressing room after the game. I often tell a story here of Jim Hiller, who is now assistant coach to Barry Trotz with the New York Islanders, and he coached there for a couple of years. And I attended a junior B game with him at one time when he was scouting, and we had a little conversation. And I said to him, Jim, you don't seem to be watching much of the play. I know that that number 9 or that goaltender defenseman, those are kids we need to be watching. And he looked at me and said, Tom, I know who the good kids are. I know who the good players are. I want to find out who the good people are. And what I'm paying attention to is what's happening at the bench. Are they the one who's coming in and lifting up the team, or are they a downer? Are they the one who's kicking the boards, smashing their sticks, complaining to others, chewing out somebody who made a mistake, et cetera, et cetera? Those are the ones that I want to find out the good and the bad. I want to see, because I need to recruit. I need good people on my team if we're going to have any chance of moving forward. People who are authentic, people who are real. But understand that in today's world, any coach, again, worth their salt, only has to go to social media, the various platforms that are available to us, and it becomes very easy to form opinions, not necessarily informed opinions. Maybe sometimes what they see is not really what's going on in a social media post, etc. But in the absence of other information, that can be how they determine things. That could plant the seed of doubt in them. It also may plant some interest, because yes, what they're seeing or what the coach is having is portrayed to them at that time may be what makes him make the decision to go the next step of exploring that person. But remember, there's no time off. Character is not something you can just turn the switch at Friday night at 11 and say, I'm going to go out and be a silly bugger, and turn it off and turn it back on Saturday when the game's on. No, character is 24/7. So I asked you to look at these definitions. There are many others, but here's a good list of things that exhibit or say something about a person's character. And think for a couple of minutes about people you have played with, maybe currently, maybe in the past. And think of one person, and I don't want any names, I don't want anything to be, I want it all, just think about it. And think about the person you were, most admired, most really thought that he was a key figure on your team. And think about those words. And what word would you say most described him? Now, some may have said, oh, his leadership. He's, really knew how to lift up the team, really knew how to make everybody be in the same boat, paddle in the same direction. His leadership was exceptional. It may be that he was compassionate. He just was the person who you knew was never judging somebody. He was always just a teammate, always cared about the underdog, cared about somebody else's feelings, etc. Maybe it was perseverance. He wasn't maybe the best player. He didn't have the greatest skills, but he had perseverance. He always was there. He's always working, and he didn't get discouraged. And you could go on and on about all of these different traits. I'd like you to think for a minute, what trait describes you? Or what 2 traits or 3 describes you? Who are you? And what do you want people to see that? How do you want people to see that? So as you go on in hockey, you're going to start having opportunities ahead of you. You've achieved junior B, maybe you came from bantam or midget, major midget, minor hockey associations, separate community teams, maybe you attended academy, etc. But right now, you're playing junior B. So you've attained a certain level on this journey called hockey. What is going to be the next step? What is your next goal? Perhaps you aspire to junior A or major junior. Usually it is from that level that more opportunities are available. Yes, junior B, it is has some opportunities available if it is the kind of the pinnacle of your hockey career, but certainly junior A or major junior starts to create all sorts of options. And from there, the options after junior are Canadian universities, U Sport, NCAA Division I, NCAA Division III, Alberta colleges, the BC Intercollegiate League, club programs in Canada and the United States, as well as perhaps professional, and there are now many leagues around the world. So what is available in Canada? Well, there are 30 plus, I think it's 34 right now, men's programs at Canadian universities or U Sport, and over 25 women's programs. There is just some examples spreading from UBC on the West Coast to programs at Moncton and St. Mary's, Dalhousie on the East Coast, and everything in between. Every one of them unique, and every one of them perhaps ideal for one person and not another. Each one of those examples, and tonight, later as we go along, but also more appropriately in the next seminar, we'll look at the exact requirements, what the universities expect and what some of them will maybe offer. But perhaps that isn't the field that you want to be looking at, perhaps because you want to look at some smaller colleges which perhaps have more technical programs and trades programs, etc., than the strict academics. Perhaps you're that is more your style of learning. Actually, I often will bring this point up at this point, is that as athletes, many of you are likely kinesthetic learners. You learn by doing, and you learn by seeing and manipulating and getting that hockey stick and trying it out, etc. Your preferred style of learning is certainly not sitting and listening to somebody blab like myself for an hour about a topic and then trying to figure it out from there. You like to get involved right off the bat. Well, if you are that type of a learner, then perhaps you would need to give second thought to, hey, why am I thinking about going on to a university and pursuing an academic four-year degree when it's not how I'm going to learn best, and it's not an environment that I'm going to particularly thrive in. So think about all the environments. Perhaps you are somewhat of a kinesthetic learner, but you are more of an auditory learner. So again, maybe both could work. But again, addressing it, you think of all those things. And there are many colleges in Alberta. There's 9 men's programs and 4 women's programs that offer hockey. And the institutions there, each of them very unique, each of them having different types of career and educational programs to pursue. But at the same time, playing a very high level of hockey while you're pursuing that education. The BC Intercollegiate League, 6 programs, that 5 in British Columbia, the one being Eastern Washington University, that is outside of Canada and British Columbia. But again, Simon Fraser and UVic are 2 of the top universities in Canada. So if you want to pursue a law degree or a medical degree, absolutely could be a great place to do it at. University of Victoria, I did my master's degree there, and my son did his undergrad, etc. Really fine university. It just doesn't happen to have a varsity hockey program. In other words, they have many sports. They're playing U Sport, as in CIS as used to be, Canadian University. However, hockey, they don't have the funding to support it to that level, but they still have a program that is a very good program and has very good hockey players there, and people who are pursuing their education while at the same time getting to continue to pursue their love of the sport of hockey. Selkirk College, very small college in Ncaa in the Kootenays, that has some really interesting specialty programs. They used to have one of the only aviation programs anywhere in the province, and there are many different programs such as that. Vancouver Island University here on the island in Nanaimo. So again, pursuing what makes most sense to you, maybe your talent-wise, ability-wise, also what you're looking for educationally. Again, not having tunnel vision and only seeing, oh, I'm going to go to North Dakota, when in fact that is a very unrealistic choice for a lot of reasons. If the NCAA is one of the options that you wish to pursue, there are over 60 men's programs and 35 women's programs in the NCAA Division I. And there you can see some samples of the various leagues within NCAA Division I hockey. Obviously, the most one maybe well known is the Ivy Leagues, the very academic programs of Brown, Yale, Dartmouth, Harvard, Princeton, Cornell, coupled with very good hockey programs. But there are many, many different programs across the United States. And again, depending upon what you're looking for, do you want a small town or do you want a large, thriving metropolis, etc.? Where do you want to live, and how do you want to pursue your hockey dreams and your education? There are over 80 men's programs and over 50 women's programs in NCAA Division III. And there are some examples of the various leagues within Division III. Now, usually, and by and large, there are maybe smaller teams or smaller universities, I should say. They are very often quite academic, some of them. Maybe ones where, the academics come a little bit first, and, yes, we have hockey programs and all, etc. They don't have as much financial support for the hockey or for any of their sports, but there is financial aid. There are some very good opportunities, and I know countless players who've made those choices. There's also 450 universities or colleges in the United States that have club or non-varsity programs. So Arizona, which now plays in the NCAA Division I, for years was only a club program within their school, and just built the program, built the interest within the school, very good hockey opportunities. But I know several young people who've gone on to some of the various universities that have club programs in San Diego, Oklahoma. You could, with 450 of them, it could take all night just to talk about what is available. Some very, very good opportunities and some very good hockey, and also programs that you want to pursue educationally. If you want to pursue the NCAA, you have to become familiar with the NCAA Eligibility Center, because it is a gatekeeper for all athletics at NCAA Division I and II level in the United States. In a sense, I like to call it a gatekeeper because it is separate, it is within the NCAA underneath that umbrella, but very much separate in the sense that if somebody wants to play at Division I, which is where hockey is, you first off have to get vetted, or you have to get your approved by the NCAA Eligibility Center, who then say these people have met the minimum requirements You know what I said about minimum, so you know, don't be shooting for the minimum, but some people have met the bottom, at least the bottom standards, at least, and they are available to universities to be recruited to Division I hockey. Then the individual has to meet the admission requirements of that university. So it's a two-step process in the United States, whereas in Canada, you apply to the coach at University of Calgary perhaps wants you to go there, the coach at SAIT, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, wants you to go there, except recruit you, and then they ask you to please apply through admissions of that university. There's no kind of eligibility center step. But it also has a very important task in the NCAA, in that it is the organization which oversees amateurism certification. Make sure that all the athletes playing at that level are considered to be amateurs by the NCAA, and I'll have a little more to say about that. But what do you have to take into account? What are they looking for when a school looks at your transcripts? So again, don't be fooled by minimums. You know, it may say minimum is 60%. Well, yeah, that might be the minimum, but I don't know too many people who've been able to get admitted to UBC, for example, with a 60%. In fact, I know no one has. Push to be your best. If your best, absolute best is 79%, then that's what you're pushing for. And maybe just a little bit more. If you can achieve a 91% and you're sitting at 78 and you think, oh, I'm going to make the minimum, don't be fooled by that minimum, because by the time you apply to that school, perhaps all the spaces that they have available to first-year university students have been taken up long before they get to anybody who has 78%. So shoot for the best you can do, because perhaps that's going to be what is good enough in the year that you are trying to apply. Canadian universities look at grades 11 and 12. Very different than American schools look at grades 9 to 12. And that is something, that is a difference. Please remember, if you are looking at, do I want to go to Canadian schools or American schools, and what are going to be your chances? We'll get into all that more details in the next seminar. Canadian schools, if you want to play hockey there, you apply direct to the school, as I have said before, whereas the NCAA has the gatekeeper, the Eligibility Center, which vets all athletes. There's no limit on upgrading for Canadian schools, but I, ask some caution to be taken there. I have seen many people whose dreams became very difficult because they unnecessarily relied on, oh, I'll do some upgrade. Now, I'm not saying that somebody with dedication, perseverance, and a newfound goal, etc., can't rise above and get those opportunities back. But it is a tough road to hoe. So please do pay attention all the way along the journey to do your best. But you can upgrade. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4 courses you want, and you can do them maybe the first year you get out, you're 18, and you're playing junior hockey, do some upgrading. You can do it in the second year and third year, all the way up until you're finished junior hockey. But in the NCAA, that doesn't work. The NCAA only accepts one course to be upgraded, and only in the year immediately after you graduate, which for most cases is 18. So if NCAA is one option that you want to continue to have, you want to pursue, make sure that when the time comes, they would be able to accept you. And you're only going to have that one course. So, If you got 5, 6, 3, 4 courses that you know are going to pull you down, attend to those when you're still in high school. But what are some of the misconceptions? What are some of the things that put people on the wrong track? Well, some of the ones that I've seen many, many times, it doesn't matter how good you are if they can't get you in. The old wise tale that somebody who's the big dumb football player who, failed everything and still gets on to the university for a scholarship. Those things don't happen. Perhaps what happens sometimes is that a student who has a little less than the average could possibly make it in because in some sports with admissions, they work out a index. They allow a sport to take in somebody who just falls a little bit below the line because they've got 1 or 2 who fall just way above the line. But that is only for the people who fall just below, just above. If you don't have the required marks, they're not going to be able to get you in. It also doesn't matter how good you are if they have concerns about your character. If there has been some red flags, some things that have shown up either in reports from coaches, from their own observations, from social media, whatever, however they have got that information, if there are some red flags about your character, maybe they will dig a little deeper, but often they will just go somewhere else. They will not continue to pursue that player. Be realistic in your goals and your expectation. Don't be fooled by the glitz and the glamour. You don't make your choice because, they got the best dressing room or they have the best sticks and, because they've got great weight training there, etc. You have to look at some of the real critical things, such as who are the people surrounding you? What is the value of their programs? What are the philosophies that, it's built on? You want to be a place that has got these people surrounding you who are going to contribute to your journey in a positive way. Have they got programs that you want to pursue in terms of your education? These are critical things that you have to attend to. And don't become a disabled junior hockey player. And I don't mean don't get injuries, etc. I certainly don't want to see that happen. But what I do see happen many times is that people who, because hockey has this thing called junior hockey, in that most of the college programs are not recruiting players until they're 19 or 20 years of age and have had a year, 2 or 3 of junior outside of high school. That period becomes critical to whether or not you're going to have some options in the future. If you have a tunnel vision, if you become one-dimensional, if you become somebody who you know all about hockey, but you suck at the rest of life, or that you don't have good study habits, or you've lost touch with an education, or you've become very good at card playing and gaming, but not at study habits, etc. These are not the things that look good on a resume or not look good, and those are things that coaches will research. Do your research. Find out. Not all schools are equal. Really dig into it. Don't go to school just because they have a reputation. Find out about the schools. And this is something I'm going to address in a later seminar. Don't wait for them to come to you. How can you raise your profile? But know the realities. There are very few full rides. Yes, there is financial aid. Yes, there is athletic scholarships. Yes, there are other opportunities for funding, etc. But this mysterious, he got a full ride to such and such a school, unless you are the type of a player, such as Sidney Crosby or whoever, that everybody wants, know that likely in your reality is going to be that it's not a full ride situation. And with American universities, it can become very expensive. Those financial realities I'm going to talk about in a later seminar as well. So again, don't be fooled by those questions or by those assumptions sometimes that people are making. So where do we go from here? Looking forward to the seminars 2 and 3. You know, what are the schools I should consider? What specific admission requirements do each of them have? What does the NCAA Eligibility Center say are the minimum set of criteria that they're going to evaluate on? How do you compare one school to another? What questions should you be asking? What are the financial realities? You know, it's $65,000, $70,000 American per year to go to Harvard. Well, how does that work when Harvard, when they don't even have athletic scholarships, they have financial aid? So, you know, you've got to, don't just go by these mysterious information that comes from somewhere. You need to find out and work with your parents in that. Get support. You know, reach out. And that is one of the things that KI has decided that they would do for you by bringing on somebody like myself with this sort of information that you can then do proper research. Then should I self-market? What is involved in marketing myself to schools or junior programs? What's the best time to go on? To finish off, you're going to have to look at your interests and preferences. You're going to have to look at your suitability and the suitability of schools for you. You're going to have to look at your learning styles, as I've talked about. You're going to have to think about your career and athletic goals. Where those goals going to be best able to be met? What are your lifestyle preferences? What are the financial realities for you and your family? What is the fit with you and the hockey program that and the coach that is there? All these things will come together at some point, and it'll be considerations in making decisions about what opportunities you are going to pursue. So next, on November 15th, we'll look very specifically at pathways to college hockey and in education. Obviously, again, I like to commend the KI for having the commitment to their players and their players' future. Again, each of the teams will have somebody who has been designated as their educational advisor. Perhaps it'll be very much across the board in terms of the information that those advisors have or have in their backgrounds. However, again, that is what the KI is attempting to do, to kind of raise the bar and say, well, at a minimum, you know, players should have this information, and that becomes my job. If your advisor on your team is not able to help you at this stage, perhaps then a call to myself or a referral to myself can be appropriate. So at that, it has just been an hour, which I hope was our maximum. And are there any questions, specific or global type questions that I can address at this point, or would you prefer them to be talked about later? Remembering there is no silly question, there's no silly questions or dumb questions, because I have learned that by and large, parents and players are not, this is not something that is readily available to them, and that's not something that for most of them, it comes naturally to know this information. Why would you, particularly with regards to American opportunities, etc. So never be embarrassed by not knowing something. Certainly, it only is a question of. So I'm seeing a few things up on the board, not necessarily just questions. I appreciate the people's reactions. I'm hoping that this evening has been worthwhile, something that you can say, well, that was worth my time. I'm glad I got that information, that you put November 15th on your calendar, and then after that in December for our self-marketing. And please do give feedback for your coaches, but also let the league know how much this information is important, and please commend them for going that extra mile for the players. Okay, so I will bid you good night and good luck. Again, I will be available through your education advisors, through your teams, to be of help if I can. Good night.